coming home was supposed to be simple. I certainly didn't plan on meeting the hottest guy on earth, and certainly didn't know he would be my brother. Just a few weeks of bad coffee, awkward family dinners, and sleeping in my old bed with the broken ceiling fan humming all night. I'd done it enough times since I left for college. It was a pattern. But this time, something felt off the second I walked through the front door. It was him, Eli, my little brother. Only he wasn't so little anymore. I caught him leaning against the kitchen counter, drinking out of the carton like he owned the place. Tall now, filled out in the shoulders, a small tattoo curling out from under the sleeve of his t-shirt. His hair was longer too, falling in waves he clearly didn't care to tame. He looked up, and his face broke into a slow, crooked smile. Look who finally decided to show up. Jesus, I said, setting my duffel down. You hit puberty or what? He laughed, deep and warm, and crossed the room to hug me. The hug was tighter than I expected, firmer. He smelled like detergent and something else I couldn't place. Something familiar, maybe his cologne. Missed you, man, he muttered against my shoulder. I hesitated a second too long before returning the hug. Yeah, same. That night, after the usual catch-up dinner with our parents, Mom asking about classes I didn't care about, Dad mumbling about stocks he thought I should invest in. I found myself in the basement, our old hangout spot. The TV was still mounted above the beat-up couch we used to fight over. The game consoles were newer, but the vibe was the same. Nostalgic. Quiet. Eli flopped down next to me, a soda in one hand, the remote in the other. Still like horror movies? He asked, already pulling up a menu. Sure, I said, trying not to watch the way his jeans rode up his thigh as he adjusted. Halfway through the movie, his leg brushed mine. Not an accident. Or maybe it was. But it happened again. And again. And I didn't move away. Cold? He asked casually, not taking his eyes off the screen. A little. He leaned in. His shoulder bumped mine. You want the blanket, or? I'm good. We didn't talk about it. We just sat there. Closer than we used to. Silent. I thought I imagined the look he gave me when the movie ended. I thought I imagined the way his voice dropped when he said, "Don't stay up too late," as he headed upstairs. But that night, lying in my old bed, staring at the ceiling fan that still clicked on every third rotation, I felt it. A shift. Eli wasn't a kid anymore. And the way he looked at me, it didn't feel like a brother just happy to see his sibling again. It felt like something else entirely. The next day passed in a blur of errands, Mom's grocery lists, and pretending to care about neighborhood drama I barely remembered. I caught glimpses of Eli here and there, coming out of the shower shirtless, slamming the fridge like it owed him money, teasing Mom about her cooking, but we barely said more than a few words. It wasn't until after dinner that the weird tension picked back up. I was upstairs in my room, lying on the bed, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, when I heard the knock. It was soft. Then the door opened before I could answer. Eli. He stepped inside, a bag of chips in one hand, wearing basketball shorts and a plain white tee. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered again, and he smelled faintly like that same cologne. Clean and sharp, something that made my stomach twist. You seriously just barge in now? I asked, not looking up from my phone. You didn't say not to, he said with a smirk, flopping down on the other side of the bed. Besides, I used to sleep in this room more than you did. That was 10 years ago. He shrugged and opened the chips. Still feels like mine. We sat there in silence for a while, just the occasional crunch of him eating and the glow of my screen lighting the room. You ever think about how weird it is? He said suddenly. I glanced over. What? Us. Being apart for so long, then just back like nothing happened. I locked my phone and set it on my chest. That's just life, I guess. You grow up. Shit changes. Eli nodded, slowly. Yeah, but it's like, I still remember you as this lanky dude who wouldn't let me play video games unless I begged. And now? He turned his head on the pillow to face me. Now you're just different. not in a bad way, just not who I remember. That made my heart do something strange. I didn't answer right away. "Same," I said finally. "You're taller." Your voice dropped. "You act like you run the house." "I do," he said deadpan. I laughed. He didn't. "I'm serious," he added. "I'm not the little kid you left behind." "I know." His eyes stayed on me. "Then stop treating me like one." There was no humor in his voice now, just something heavier. He wasn't just talking about video games or chores. "I'm not," I said quietly, not even sure I believed it. His eyes flicked to my mouth for a second, then back up. "Okay." He stood up, brushed chip crumbs off his shirt, and headed to the door. Halfway there, he paused. "You know you can hang out in my room too, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why would I do that?" He turned back, and for the first time, his voice had a bite of something else in it. Not anger, not even sarcasm. Something quieter, more real. "Because maybe I want you to." Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stared at the ceiling again. But the clicking fan wasn't what kept me up this time. I didn't go to his room that night. I just lay there for hours, letting his words bounce around in my skull. "Maybe I want you to." It wasn't just what he said. It was the way he said it. Like it meant something. Like it meant more than it should. The next morning, the house was empty. Mom and Dad had taken off early to visit some old friends. I found a note on the fridge about leftovers and a roast in the slow cooker, but I barely glanced at it. Eli was nowhere in sight. I figured he was sleeping in, which gave me an excuse to hover by his door like a total idiot. I didn't knock, just stared, then walked away, then came back. His door was open, just a crack. And I saw him, lying on his stomach, shirtless, blanket kicked halfway off the bed. His back was smooth, the curve of his spine running down to the waistband of his boxers, just visible beneath the sheets. His hair was a mess. He looked peaceful, unaware. I should have walked away. I didn't. Instead, I knocked, lightly this time. He stirred, groaning into his pillow. His voice was low and sleepy. "Yeah, you decent?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Eli turned his head and cracked an eye open. "If I say no, are you still coming in?" "Maybe." That got a small smile out of him. He rolled over, pulling the sheet up slightly. "Door's open, isn't it?" I stepped in, sitting awkwardly on the edge of the bed. "You good?" he asked, voice still rough with sleep. I nodded. "Didn't sleep much." He sat up slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Me neither." We didn't look at each other right away, but the air between us was tight, heavy. "I've been thinking about what you said," I finally admitted. Eli tilted his head, rubbing the back of his neck. "Which part?" "That maybe you wanted me to come in." He blinked, then gave a quiet laugh. "Yeah." "That wasn't subtle, was it?" "Not really." Silence again, not uncomfortable. Just dense. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and there was something in his expression that stopped me cold. Not teasing. Not joking. Just raw. "I'm not trying to mess with you," he said softly. "I know this is weird. I don't know. I felt different since you came back." I swallowed. "Different how?" He let out a slow breath. "Like, I want to be around you more, talk to you more, be close." My pulse was hammering. I looked down at my hands, then back at him. "You mean close? Close?" He didn't answer right away. Just nodded. I should have said something, should have shut it down. But instead, I stayed there, not moving, letting the weight of what he'd just admitted sit between us. Eli leaned back against the headboard. "You think I'm disgusting now?" I looked up, startled. "What?" "No. No, man. I don't." "Then say something," he whispered. I looked at him, at this boy who was no longer a boy, and I realized I had no idea what this was or where it was going. I only knew that the way he was looking at me made it very hard to breathe. "I'm confused," I said honestly, "but I'm not walking away." His shoulders relaxed, just a little. "Okay." We sat there for a long time. No touching, no more words, but something had shifted, and we both knew it. For the next 2 days, we danced around it. Whatever that moment in his room was, it hung between us like a low hum. Always there, even when we tried to act normal. We played games, watched TV, made dumb jokes about our parents. It felt like old times. Almost. Except it wasn't. Eli had stopped pretending. He stood closer than before, talked softer when we were alone, looked at me like he was waiting for permission. And I kept giving him nothing. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I didn't know how to. The idea that he saw me like that he felt something more than just brotherly closeness. It didn't disgust me. It scared me. Scared me because deep down, I knew I didn't hate it. On the third night, the storm hit. Thunder rattled the windows just as we were finishing dinner. Mom lit candles. Dad checked the basement. Eli met my eyes across the table and smirked. "Guess we're sleeping without AC tonight." "Great," I muttered. Later, in bed, sweat clinging to my skin, I lay there staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. I could hear him down the hall, his music faint through the wall, something mellow, something low. I lasted an hour before getting up. I didn't even think, just walked down the hallway, barefoot on the creaky wood floor. His door was closed this time. I knocked. He opened it instantly, like he'd been standing right behind it. "Hey," he said. His voice was a little breathless. "Hey," I echoed. "It's hot as hell in my room." He stepped aside. "Mine too." I paused, then walked in. The room was dim, lit only by the glow from his nightlight. He still had one, though now it looked more like a modern wall lamp. He closed the door behind me without saying anything. I sat on the edge of his bed. He sat next to me. Neither of us spoke for a long time. "You remember when we were kids and you'd sneak into my room during storms?" he asked suddenly. I smiled a little. "Yeah, you used to get scared." "I still get scared," he said quietly, "just not of storms." I looked at him, my heart catching in my throat. "What then?" he shrugged. "You." "Me?" he nodded. "Not in a bad way, just I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I don't want to lose you if it's too much." My breath caught. My throat felt tight. "You won't." He turned to face me fully now. "Then why won't you say anything?" I looked down at my hands. "Because I don't know what I'm allowed to feel." He reached out, and for the first time, he touched me. Not by accident, not playful, just placed his hand gently over mine. "I'm not asking you to feel anything you don't," he said, "but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something every time you're near me." The room was quiet, except for the storm outside, rain tapping against the windows like it had something to say. I looked at him, at his eyes, his mouth, the way he wasn't flinching from this, from me. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted again. I squeezed his hand back. "I don't think you're the only one pretending." He blinked, stunned, just for a second. Then he smiled. And the distance between us, it stopped being something that happened naturally. It became a choice. The first thing I noticed was how warm his hand was. Even in that stifling room, with the storm shaking the windows and sweat slicking the back of my neck, that small, simple touch pulled me back into my body like nothing else could. Eli's hand didn't grip or pull. It just settled over mine like it had always belonged there. I stared at our hands for a while. Mine, slightly bigger. His, steadier than I expected. Somehow, the weight of it said more than either of us had dared to speak aloud until now. "I don't want to mess you up," I murmured, not even sure if I meant me or him. Eli's head tilted slightly. "You're not messing me up." His voice wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. He just said it like it was obvious. Like the thought of me hurting him made no sense. Like it hadn't even occurred to him that this, whatever this was, could break something. I turned to face him fully, his eyes searching mine with a kind of clarity I wasn't ready for. "You don't think this is, I don't know, complicated?" He let out a breathy laugh, not mocking, just tired. "Of course it's complicated. But it feels real, doesn't it?" It did, and that was the problem. I'd spent the past few days trying to pretend this tension was something I'd imagined, that the way he looked at me was just a phase, some overgrown sibling attachment. But the truth was simpler and way more dangerous. It wasn't just him. I felt it too. The need to be close, to hold on to something I didn't understand but couldn't seem to walk away from. I didn't say any of that. I didn't need to. I just didn't let go of his hand. That night, we didn't do anything dramatic. We didn't kiss. We didn't even lie down close. Just sat on the edge of his bed, side by side, knees almost touching, breathing. Eventually, he leaned back against the wall, and I followed. The room was dim now, lit only by the soft blue of his desk lamp. Shadows stretched along the ceiling, trembling every time the thunder cracked outside. Eli spoke softly. "You remember when we were kids? Storms like this used to freak me out." "Yeah," I said. "You'd climb into my bed and pretend you were just cold." He grinned at the memory. I was cold, but mostly I just didn't want to be alone. "You were like 8, so?" I looked over at him and his smile faded into something softer. "I still don't like being alone." We didn't touch after that, not for a while. But when I lay down beside him, I didn't feel strange about it. I felt like I was supposed to be there. His bed was narrow, the kind of mattress that sagged slightly in the middle. Our arms brushed. His knee rested against mine. I could hear his breathing, slow, deeper now, like sleep was pulling him down. And I closed my eyes. And then his voice broke the silence one more time. Quiet, hesitant. "Are you scared now?" I turned my head toward him. "Of what? Of what this is?" I hesitated. "Yeah, a little." He didn't move, just let the silence stretch. And then, softly, "Me too." Eventually, the thunder faded into a gentle patter of rain, and the room settled into the kind of quiet that only comes at the end of a storm. His head was near my shoulder now, not resting on it, just close. And slowly, I let mine tip toward his until we weren't really apart anymore. We didn't say another word, just fell asleep like that. Close. Still. In the morning, I woke up first. Sunlight was slipping through the blinds, spilling across the room in strips. Eli was still asleep, turned toward me, one hand under the pillow, his face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. For a long moment, I just watched him, studied the shape of his nose, the way his eyelashes rested against his cheek. He looked peaceful, and real, and entirely himself. Something about that morning made the whole world feel quieter. I slipped out of bed carefully, stretching my arms, unsure what time it was. Downstairs, I could hear the faint clatter of dishes and Mom's voice humming some old tune she probably didn't even realize she still knew. I turned to look at Eli one more time. He blinked slowly awake, met my eyes. "Morning," I said. "Thought you might sneak out," he replied, his voice thick with sleep. "Thought about it. But you didn't." "No," he smiled. "Good." Then, as if we'd always done it this way, he sat up beside me and stretched, and I could feel the quiet between us settle into something calm. Something real. "What now?" he asked, and I didn't have a good answer. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I don't want to ignore it." His hand brushed mine again, just barely, but enough to make me feel it. Me neither. For the next couple of days, we lived in the in-between. We didn't talk about what happened. Not directly, but it showed in everything, in how we moved around each other, in the silence that felt heavier, in the looks that lasted a few seconds too long, like we were waiting for the other to break first. And the truth was, I kept waiting for it to go away, for the feeling to die down, for the curiosity, if that's even what it was, to burn itself out like a campfire left to smolder. But it didn't. It kept growing. The thing was, being near Eli felt easier than it should have. It didn't feel like something I had to force or fake. It felt natural in a way that terrified me, because I knew I wasn't supposed to want this. Not like this, not with him, but I did. And I could tell he did too. One night, our parents left for dinner, a fancy anniversary spot they'd been meaning to try for months. We both waved them off from the porch like we were just two bored kids babysitting the house. They didn't ask any questions. They never did. Inside, the silence took up space. We put on a movie, sat on the couch like we always did. But we weren't watching it. Not really. I kept catching myself glancing over at him, watching the way his chest moved as he breathed, the way his knee bounced lightly, like he was trying to shake something off. Eli must have caught me looking, because after a while he said, "I can feel your eyes on me." I didn't even try to deny it. "Yeah." He turned to me, slowly, like he was bracing himself. "Why?" I didn't know how to answer without sounding like a mess, so I went for honesty. "Because I don't know what this is." He stared at me for a long time. "Do you want it to stop?" That question dropped between us like a pin in a silent room. "No," I said. His eyes softened. "Then stop acting like we're just hanging out." I swallowed hard. "You're my brother." That word hung in the air like smoke. Not accusatory, just a fact. He didn't flinch, didn't get angry. He just nodded, like he'd expected that answer. But then he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, voice quieter. "Does that change how you feel?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My silence said everything. He looked down at his hands, fidgeted with a loose thread on his sleeve. "I keep trying to talk myself out of it," he said. "Like maybe it's just a phase, or just because we're under the same roof again. But it's not. I know it's not." His voice cracked a little, and he rubbed his palm against his jaw, nervous. "I think about you all the time," he continued. "Even when you're not here. Even when I don't want to. I think about the way you laugh when you're trying to hide it, the way you always rub your temple when you're annoyed. It's not just some random crush or whatever, it's you." I felt that in my stomach, in my chest, all the way down to my hands still clenched in my lap. "I didn't want this either," I said. "But here we are." Eli moved closer, slow and deliberate. Our knees touched. He didn't stop. "You said it yourself," he said softly. "This isn't just curiosity anymore." He reached out, his fingers grazing mine, hesitant, like he didn't want to spook me. But when I didn't pull away, he kept going until his hand covered mine fully. His thumb moved gently over my knuckle. "Tell me to stop if it's too much," he said, but it wasn't too much. I turned toward him, and then he leaned in. He didn't go straight for a kiss. He just brought his face closer, inch by inch, until our foreheads touched. Our breath mingled in that small space between. I could feel the nerves rolling off him, but he didn't pull back. Neither did I. So I did it. I closed the gap. Our lips met. Soft, tentative, not urgent, not rushed, just real. And when I felt him exhale against my mouth, I realized I'd been holding my breath too. He pulled back a little, looked at me like he needed permission to believe it was okay. I gave it to him by kissing him again. Longer this time. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed there, close enough to feel each other's breath. We didn't say anything for a while. The movie played on behind us, forgotten. But we both knew. This wasn't just a moment, it was a beginning. The next morning, we didn't pretend. We didn't go back to being just brothers watching TV or messing around in the kitchen or brushing past each other in the hallway like nothing was happening. We didn't talk about it in big declarations either. It was more like a silent agreement, something unspoken but fully understood. Everything had changed. And we both felt it. I woke up to the sound of the shower running. His door was slightly open. My room still smelled faintly like him, like his shampoo or whatever body wash he used. Something clean and warm and impossible to ignore now that I knew what it was like to kiss him. He came into the kitchen barefoot, wet hair pushed back messily, a loose t-shirt clinging to his shoulders. Our eyes met across the room. He didn't say, "Good morning." He just smirked slightly and reached into the fridge. "How do you like your eggs?" he asked casually. I gave a short laugh, rubbing my eyes. "You don't even know how to make eggs." "I Googled it last night. I'm basically a chef now." I shook my head and sat down at the kitchen table. Watched him try to crack an egg without making a mess. He was bad at it, and it was honestly kind of adorable. We ate together quietly. Every now and then, our legs would brush under the table. This time, neither of us shifted away. Later, we ended up back in his room. Not for anything dramatic, just to be there. Together. He lay on his back, scrolling through something on his phone. I sat beside him, flipping through a magazine I didn't care about. At one point, he tossed his phone aside, turned his head to me, and said, "You know this can't be a one-time thing, right?" I looked up. "Yeah," I said. "I know. Not saying we need to figure everything out today," he added quickly. "Just, I don't want to go back to pretending. I don't think I can." I nodded, feeling the weight of what he was really saying. "We won't." He leaned over, his head resting lightly on my shoulder. I felt his fingers graze mine again, tentative but steady. The contact felt so simple. So right. There were still questions. A lot of them. How would we handle this when I went back to school? What would happen if anyone found out? What did this even mean long term? But none of that mattered right then. Because right then, he was next to me. Not as a brother. Not even just as someone I loved. But as someone who saw me fully and still chose to stay close. The line we were never supposed to cross? We'd crossed it. And maybe it wasn't neat. Maybe it wasn't simple. But it was ours now.